We are back with another live episode of the Bully Ball Podcast on the Gold Standard Podcast Network. I'm Jason Aponte, joined as always by Steph Sanchez. Steph, did you get a haircut or are you just styling it better?
Both maybe? I don't know.
Well, first of all, let's start it with this. I saw your IG stories and you were away, right? Like, and you're like posting like
Yeah.
these extravagant like meals and stuff. I love that you got to get away. But I'll tell you this: as soon as I find out that someone is on vacation on Instagram, I immediately get jealous and I stop looking at their stories. So yeah, I was like, that definitely has something to do with you as well too.
I was wondering like why did Jay stop watching my stories? I didn't even notice.
It's
But
because I'm
no,
a huge hater. Like I'm a huge hater. Like if you're enjoying yourself and you're on vacation, I, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. That's such a secret billionaire. I don't want to see you on vacation living your best life when the East Coast is getting hit with earthquakes and it's still not warm. Like
earthquakes.
today it's 70. Today it's 70. Like it feels really good today. But literally, like I don't want to see that. Like, live your best life, but I don't have to watch it.
You don't. So do what feels right for you. But yeah, no, I had a great time. Actually, there's a story behind the trip. Got engaged, on
No
Thursday.
way.
Yeah, yeah. So
Congratulations, Steph. Hell yeah.
thank thank you. So it was a celebration trip of sorts.
Look at you, Steph. I'm so proud of you, Steph. That's so awesome, man. I love love. See, that's one thing I can say at least. Like, I hate people on vacation, but I
Yeah,
love
you
love.
you
Yeah.
were just talking about being a hater, but
But I
but he
love
loves
love,
love.
and
He
I
loves
love
love.
love. I just don't love when you're on vacation. Like I hate that. Like that's definitely something I hate. But again, congrats, Steph. All the
Thank
best
you. Thank
wishes. Everything that is awesome. What an amazing way to start this off with good vibes. And just
Yeah,
give me a
man.
few
Good
minutes, and I'll
vibes.
tear it down with some bad vibes. So just give me a few minutes. I got this. Um, so a lot to talk about with the San Francisco 49ers. Even when it's dead, there's always something to talk about. The episode's labeled How the 49ers Need to Adjust Their Draft Philosophy. I wrote an article about a first round prospect that possibly would need development. And we'll get into that. We're definitely going to dive deep into that because I've got some good insight and things that I think are an interesting conversation. But I want to get something off my chest real quick. So before we get on here, Steph, and we have a group chat, you, me, and Rob, and that's where we throw our ideas in there, right? Like this is
Mhm.
what we're going to talk about. Okay. So friend of the pod, not friend of ours, Kay Adams, says, and not that she's not, and not that we're not friends with her, she just doesn't like us. She only likes Rob. Um,
She doesn't know us, to be
she
fair.
doesn't know us. Right, right, right.
She doesn't
We're
know
too
us.
small. We're too small for her. She had 49ers legend Dante Whitner on today.
Mhm.
And Dante Whitner, let's just say, isn't shy about saying whatever it is that he believes in that moment. Um, you know, in terms of, hey, Dak Prescott stinks, or this and this and this, or I think the 49ers are going to go undefeated. Dante Whitner really doesn't have a filter and he says things, right? But Dante Whitner had some choice words about what happened in the Super Bowl. And Rob's got it loaded up. I don't want to misquote him. I just want to hear what Dante says and we'll react.
And when we think about the Super Bowl as
Mhm.
well, I think that the 49ers played against the refs as well, guys. I think that when we look at that film and you see bear hugs on those defensive ends, right?
Wow.
And you really see it in blatant moments in the game. The 49ers played against Taylor Swift, the refs, and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Dante.
All three.
Dante, you really I don't think you were gonna that was not ready for that little addition to that. Okay, I'll let you say that. I'm not gonna question that. You're
And when we
Oh. Steph, you go first. You go first.
I first I love Kay's reaction because I feel like without saying it, she kind of understood the ridiculousness of that statement just by her reaction. I think it's kind of how a lot of us feel. Look, there were a lot of 49er fans who, after the Super Bowl, went to blame the refs, as always happens in any type of loss, especially one as big as a Super Bowl. But if we're being rational about the way that game went down and what led to the loss, it was not any reason of it being missed calls or because of the refs. I mean, you have to really look hard at what the 49ers did. And honestly, you don't even have to look hard. You just have to look at the game. I haven't even watched the game over, and I know several things that went wrong in that game that hurt the 49ers, and it was execution errors, right? From not just one player, but several players, several position groups. And so I think, look, this game went to overtime. The 49ers had a chance to put it away a couple of times. They didn't, and that did not have anything to do with the refs. Sorry to say.
Steph Sanchez, ever the eloquent, peacemaker, level-headed person, allow me to take this completely off the rails. Dante Whitner, I respect everything that you've done on the football field. I'll never disrespect you. You are an absolute legend, right? You know, playing the game of football is exceptionally hard, right? And you are very good at it for a long time. I am so fucking tired of the crying about this game, about the refs. The 49ers fumbled the football in the red zone. Why would the refs allow that to happen? Dre Greenlaw tears his Achilles. Why did the refs allow that to happen? I am so tired of this. I'm so tired of it. And there's a bunch of people that call the 49er fan base 40 whiners. And at times, and this is just Dante Whitner's take, they're sending this up. They're not debunking this. They're sending it up. It is April 9th. April 9th. We are on the doorstep of the NFL draft. And yet, we are still discussing the Super Bowl and saying the refs were to blame. Did the refs not know the overtime rules? Did the refs blow a blocking assignment on Chris Jones? Did the refs make Christian McCaffrey fumble the football? Did the refs make the 49ers not finish in the red zone and take field goals? It's so ridiculous, man. I don't understand it. Being upset at a Super Bowl loss, it's hard. Like, people have to find a way to fix their feelings, figure out a way to understand what happened. They've got to point a finger at something. They got to so this is why. What on earth makes you believe that the refs were the reason the 49ers didn't finish the job here? I despise this narrative. I despise when I see it over and over on Twitter, in the comments. The refs blew it. The 49ers blew it. They're the ones who lost the game. The Kansas City Chiefs won it. They're the ones who won the game. The refs are not the reason the 49ers lost this game. And then, they're battling Taylor Swift. Cut it out. Cut it out, man. Cut it out. Dante Whitner, you're a baller, man. Nobody's going to say anything bad about the way you play the game. At times, you say things that are out of this world, and this is one of them. I don't understand this. I don't understand this constant need to blame the refs for something the 49ers couldn't finish. And we all have to eat that. But going and rushing and complaining about the refs, I'm sick of it, Steph. I really am, man. Please stop it. And if you want to get all mad at me for saying this, that's fine, whatever. But it is ridiculous to continuously blame the refs when you had the ball in your hands with a chance to finish it. You had a chance to stop them on defense. You had this, you had that. Why did the refs allow Dre Greenlaw to tear his Achilles in this game? Why would the refs allow this to happen? The refs had little to no bearing in this game at all. And the 49ers defense still was holding the entire time, even if they were being held with missed calls. The 49ers defense played well in this game. I don't get it, Steph. You explain it, or just say it more rationally than me.
No, I mean, it's understandable to be angry because I get pissed off when people call 49er fans 40 whiners. But yeah, it's true. Like, there's a lot of people who whine and complain and can't take a loss for what it is, which is the 49ers losing that game. But, as you said, it's April. Couple months removed from the Super Bowl now. I'm ready to move on, man. 49ers lost. That's it.
I don't understand why
we
we have
got
to keep talking about this. Yeah, like
Exact-
why do we have to
yeah,
keep
exactly.
revisiting and opening the wound? It's like a scab. And you just keep pulling it open. Like, why are we still talking about this? It's over. It's done. Let's move on. There's draft prospects. There's Brandon Aiyuk possibly being here. There's a new season on the doorstep soon. Steph, I don't understand why we have to keep talking about literally the Super Bowl. I don't get it.
I mean, we don't, I guess. we said our piece, and that's good. But to your point, Jay, and you make this point all the time, just because you've played football before doesn't always mean that you know ball.
Yes, 100%. If and so to this point a little bit more, if every head coach had to be an NFL player, then why are there so few? Like Dan Campbell, Antonio Pierce, those guys played football. Jared Mayo now, they played football. But I can count on my hands, D'Amico Ryans, I can count on my hands how many NFL head coaches, how many coaches have actually played. If the requirement to be able to coach ball and know ball is being an NFL player, then why are guys like Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan, all these guys from this tree and everywhere else never played it down? I don't think Mike McCarthy's ever played football. Doubt Nick Sirianni has. So it goes back to kind of like, yeah, you played the game, and I respect that. But like I watch Keyshawn Johnson and a bunch of these guys like fire off these awful takes all the time. And people will say, well, you think you know better. Yes, I do. I know better than Keyshawn Johnson to say certain stupid things. I know better than Dante Whitner to say that the refs were the reason the Super Bowl was lost. That doesn't mean that I played football, but it's a rational take. But because they played football, they're allowed to get these off. I'm glad we had this discussion again, Steph. I'm so glad that we're talking about this again.
Who knows? I mean, maybe he's trying to get on ESPN or something, maybe
Yeah.
he's trying to go the media route. You got to have the hot takes. You got to say all these things to get the people riled up. That's all part of it. So I don't know, maybe he's got other fish to fry there, but we've got some draft stuff to talk about now with the 49ers, right? We're just a few weeks from the draft, and I mean, it's all we can think about at this point. So what are the 49ers about to draft a project in round 1? Jay, I know that you wrote a piece on this, so enlighten us, for those that haven't checked it out yet. Go and check that out on Niners Nation, but who are you talking about in that one?
So I was lucky enough to catch up with Field Yates. Incredible person. You and I have had a chance to speak with him directly. Everything that you kind of see about him is absolutely true. Like he radiates like good vibes.
Mhm.
And Field came out with a mock in which the 49ers trade up with the Dallas Cowboys to select Amarius Mims. And it sparked a conversation about, well, this guy obviously has the talent, but we haven't seen it. And if Rob has the clip up, I would love for Fields, Field to talk about it, because it's way better. So I'll let Field tell it, and then we can talk about, the whole project thing in round 1.
And so for Amarius Mims, specific to San Francisco, I thought it was a good fit for this reason. Amarius Mims might need some time. And I say some time rather than being more specific, because I don't love saying a guy needs a full year or a guy needs only a couple of weeks, because you just don't know. I mean, it's young 20s player, but he has 803 career snaps in college. 803, just for some perspective, that's fewer than Joe Alt had last season. And Joe Alt, of course, has been playing for much of the past 3 years. You're talking about basically 3 times as much tape on Joe Alt than you have on Amarius Mims. That being said, when you've got a guy who's 6'8", 340 pounds, who does not look like he's 340 pounds at all, has a nearly 87-inch wingspan with these 35-plus inch arms, and this unbelievable set of physical tools, it's hard not to think that that guy is going to, not be a first 25 or 26 overall player pick. And for San Francisco, well, I'm sure fans probably feel some strife over the offensive line from this past postseason in the Super Bowl specifically. Colt McKivitz, he's played a lot of snaps for you. So if you're a 49ers offensive coach, probably saying to yourself, we can hold the fort down a little bit until someone like Amarius Mims is ready to go with a Colt McKivitz or others. And if that, when I say ready to go, if that ready to go is week 1, great. If it's week 6, also great. If it's week 18, fine. So he they're one of the few teams I think that can afford to be a little bit more patient than others, which is part of the reason why I didn't have him going to Dallas at 24, because I do feel like Dallas, with their glaring need at left tackle, needs someone that can play right now. And I think Amarius Mims could play right now, but I'm not totally certain on that.
Great answer. And I think his logic is sound when he's talking about that. And this goes back to what we spoke about when Colton McKivitz resigned was, oh my God, they're going to run it back. Well, no, they're providing themselves a safety net in case they draft a tackle or they draft someone on the offensive line who can't play right away. Can't play right away. Now, the problem is there's a lot of 49er fans hear project in the first round and they get a little PTSD. So let's be completely frank. The Trey Lance thing has a lot of people shaking in their boots a little bit about a project because Trey Lance was defined as a guy who has a ton of talent, hasn't played that many games, needs time. But the San Francisco 49ers are right now in a win now position. So in the first round, and the hit rate is less than 50% in the first round, and it goes down each round, in terms of that. Can they afford, Steph, another project or someone that is going to need time and is going to kind of like have to have his hand held a little bit?
Well, like Field said, yes, they could afford it, but do they want to do that again? Yeah, the reason they could afford it is because, Colton McKivitz is still there, a guy who, if you hear Kyle Shanahan ever talk about Colton McKivitz, like he gets glowing reviews, right? He doesn't seem to think that there's an issue at right tackle as much as us fans would say there is. And so, yeah, in that sense, I do think the 49ers do have the time to maybe develop someone like an Amarius Mims, take a chance on him and his small sample size that he has shown. Um, but do they want to do that? I guess is the question. I thought it was interesting because even Matt Barrows, his latest mock draft on The Athletic, which I actually really liked his mock draft. He had the 49ers trading up too, and it was probably with Dallas as well. I think that was pick 21. I don't recall, but trading up for Amarius Mims too. So there is something there maybe that a lot of people are like seeing. The 49ers obviously need at tackle. Not really sure that at 31 there's going to be a guy who's going to be able to be as big of an impact guy for them available at 31 for offensive line. And so with that being said, I think it makes sense to trade up for that person, but do you want to trade up for someone who's going to be a project again? Right. And I think the issue with Trey Lance is that there was a lot that I think was impacted as far as, the scouting with him and maybe what the 49ers were expecting to get versus what they got. Like there was a lot of other factors there, including like his injuries that happened as soon as he got in the league that kind of hindered his chance for development and growth. And he was not ready when the 49ers were needing him to be ready. So, that was kind of Lance's deal. Would that kind of happen with Mims as well? That's kind of the question. We don't know, but do you want to take that gamble? I don't know. I personally, I would be open to it just for the reason of like, I think they have a solid enough starting lineup right now that I think they are comfortable with. And then you at least have that high upside guy in Mims who, sure, if he's not ready to take over for Colton McKivitz and compete with him right away at right tackle, at least maybe you can say you have someone who can take over Trent Williams' spot when he eventually retires. So I wouldn't be mad at it if they took that chance because I think, Mims could potentially be a high impact kind of player if he does pan out.
That's the issue, is that this is so boomer bust, right? Like there's only two ways this really goes. Either he turns into this guy who has these unique gifts and all this talent into, I hate the word generational, but let's just say an all pro, a perennial all pro, right? Like, and I think that's what the ceiling is. But the floor is quite literally someone who doesn't even play or is out of the league, pretty quickly. And I think that's the scary part because the 49ers are in this position right now, needing impact players in the first few rounds because one, they eschewed all those picks for Trey Lance and didn't have a first round pick. But because they keep taking these developmental guys are the guys who need another year. Every year.
Mhm.
Every year, it's always, well, give him a year, right? This is Cam Ladu's breakout this year, right? There's this guy. There's this guy, right? Like, the reason that you are in this position and makes this draft so critical is because not only have you kicked the can down the road with many players that needed a year or needed some time, but now you're up against the salary cap and you're very close to having to pay a quarterback now. And just the going rate, like, we're not even talking about like if Brock gets more money or and he improves this year. Then you have to really make some tough decisions. So the reason that this draft is so big is because you've kicked the can down the road with a bunch of developmental guys. And now you have to find cheap impact cost control players now because you've got some tough decisions to make down the line. Who's going to be here, who's not. That's when we talk about window in terms of Super Bowl, whatever it is. The window to win when your quarterback costs you nothing. The window to win when you can bring in all high-end players because the quarterback literally costs you nothing. And you're getting top 10 quarterback play for less than $1 million a year. This is what we're talking about. That's what makes this offseason so critical. It makes this draft so critical because it's about to happen. Everybody else is still going to deservedly get paid. You got to pay Nick Bosa. You're paying Deebo Samuel. You're paying Kittle. You're paying McCaffrey, Trent Williams. All these guys. Mooney Ward's going to want to get paid. Like, what do you do now in this draft? And you need to find guys that, I don't want to say have to step in day one, but it has to be young, cost-controlled, impact players eventually. And that's the hard part with this. Because if you swing on Amarius Mims, you are swinging on the talent, you are swinging on their abilities and what you think they can be. But just know the floor, it's really low if this does not work. And I don't know if the 49ers can gamble on such a boom or bust prospect in the first round, being that this draft is so important.
I think had they not like swung and missed on so many other development picks, I think we'd probably be, more comfortable with it. But given that they have that track record now of like those guys not really panning out for them, yeah, I mean, it would give me some hesitancies too in the grander scheme of looking at all of their drafts put together. Yeah, I mean, that would definitely be an issue. Yeah, we still don't know if Latu's gonna pan out, right? We don't know
Well,
if some of these other guys are gonna pan
but
out.
the 49ers are telling you what they think of Latu and Willis because they're bringing in every Tom, Dick, and Harry who can play tight end to fill Charlie Warner's role. Like literally every single time that you look around, the 49ers are looking for a tight end too. And that's another pick that's wasted, right? I don't want to bring up the other pick that I think was a waste or whatever. That's fine. You know what I mean? But again, you messing around with a guy who needs a redshirt season or he needs development or, he's just a little raw. I don't know if you can afford to do that now. And the drafting process is an imperfect science, right? I mean, obviously, right? Brock Purdy's kind of destroyed the quarterback evaluation process. How could a guy go this long without being drafted and then turn out to be this? And then how can a guy so high up end up not being in the league? I mean, even look at that quarterback class when we had pick 3. When the Niners had pick 3, look at the names. Trevor Lawrence is the only starter. Mac Jones is his backup. Justin Fields is Russell Wilson's backup. Trey Lance is the backup to the backup in Dallas. It's crazy to think that you have all these can't miss prospects and you just, hey, this is the best quarterback draft in a long time. And then you end up with having them not be even on rosters or even impact. So right now, it's hard to say because you can say that the guys can't miss and you feel really good about it. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to pan out. But a boom or bust prospect, it has to be boom. Because if you bust again here in the first round, now that the 49ers have a first round pick again, it's not going to be a good look. It's just not going to be a good look.
Yeah, and we got this question from Nick Eller. He says, lots of talk about Brandon Staley and the star player Ramsey role. Do Niners target Cooper DeJean for this role, free safety cornerback, if they don't go offensive line? So this one's interesting to me, right? Like, because at 31, assuming they stay there, I think we're kind of in agreement that there's a low possibility that they find like an impact tackle right away at that spot. And so if a guy like Cooper DeJean or Kool-Aid McKinstry happens to fall to 31 because of their respective, injuries that kind of had people assuming that they would fall, then I'd be running to the podium for either one of those guys. The problem is, I think that both of those players in their pro days, and Cooper DeJean had his just a couple of days ago, but he lit it up. I think they're going to go about where they were expected to go from the beginning, which is way before 31. So if they're there, yeah, no question about it. But I don't think they are going to be there for the 49ers to pick. Now, if 49ers wanted to trade up for any one of those guys, that's something else I wouldn't be mad at, just because I see corner, for example, being a huge need for the 49ers. If you look at all the guys that are going to be free agents after this season, it's a huge need, assuming as of right now that, they don't extend either of Mooney, Ward, or Lenore. But what do you think, Jay, on this one?
This one's a little bit tough. I mean, I haven't. I'll be honest. I haven't heard so much about that star role, that this Ramsey role thing. Um, the 49ers need to address the secondary, because they're gonna have maybe like one cornerback under contract next season. And if Mooney Ward continues to play, why wouldn't he get a raise? Someone else is going to be in the market for his services. So you have to find someone, right? Like, do they believe Darrell Luter is the guy? Like, do they believe that Ambry Thomas can? I don't know. And honestly, I'm not as confident in. I guess I shouldn't say that about Luter, because we just haven't seen him. I'm definitely not as confident in Ambry Thomas at this point. Like, I think that
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, I think that ship has kind of sailed. Third round pick, right? Third round pick. So they have to address this one way or another, because you need a certain amount of guys to play football, and the 49ers are dangerously close next season to not having any of these guys. Diamandola Noir is gonna, if he has another good season, he's gonna want to raise, and someone else is gonna be in the market for his services as well too. It's hard right now what the 49ers are doing right now, and if you're looking at draft needs, obviously secondary, obviously tackle, you know, possibly wide receiver, depending on how this Brandon Aiyuk situation goes and what goes on with Deebo Samuel. All of these things are why all of these picks are so critical. And I think that's what makes this draft so interesting, because the 49ers can't afford anymore to have guys that are a year away, or he needs time. Like, they have to be as close as you can be to polished, right? You got pick 31, 63, 94, 124, 132, 135, the clerical error. Thank you for that one. And then where they generally hit 5th, 6th, 7th rounds, like later on. But all of these picks should be used to find the best player available, but while addressing a need, right? Like, if that makes any sense. Like, the idea that the first round and pick 31 has to be a offensive lineman, I think that's a little bit overblown, only because boards are weird, and who's going to be left around. And if there's a secondary player that is there that you feel can make an impact sooner, I think that's you should really like take a look at that. And that's what I mean. It's best player available, but it's best player available for your needs, not jamming a need into a pick. Right? That's what I feel at times is the biggest mistake with teams, right? You trade DeForest Buckner, you jam Javon Kinlaw in as at defensive tackle right there, right? Like, it's because you have a need doesn't mean that you need to take that need right there in that spot.
Yeah.
If you would have waited a little bit longer and not let Tampa Bay jump you, could have Tristan Wirfs. So this is where the draft process gets very interesting, because John Lynch said this at the combine when I asked him about like best player available and all this. He said, we just draft good players and we don't care about their perceived value and where they are on the board. The 49ers sense of value on players and what they want is twofold, because it's obviously skill and it's character. Big character team, right? Like it has to be character. But their sense of value is all over the place in terms of like, hey, we think they're high on this guy. Nope, fooled you. It's someone completely different, and it's just someone who so everyone's board is different. That's what makes the draft so interesting. It's like you'll see guys. I love doing mocks because people are like, he'll never be around at that time. You don't know what's about to happen in this draft. You really don't know, right? I mean, we watched quarterbacks slide. We watched great players slide, right? Like everybody perceives value differently. But the 49ers just have their own way of doing business. And who can really argue when they've drafted so many homegrown guys that have been impact players? But the last 2 years, it just hasn't panned out. And yeah, they didn't have a first round pick. They didn't have, this, and this because of Trey Lance. Fine. But, I like the Tig Brown pick. Cam Latsu's not playing. Braden Willis is probably not playing. Ronnie Bell's probably a special teamer. D. Winters is probably somebody that is going to be a special teamer. So, like, again, this is all from last year's draft. All these guys that you don't know, or they possibly aren't going to be impact players at all. That's why you can't mess around this draft, right? Jalen Graham, like all these guys, we don't know. But we're also not confident either. There hasn't been these flashes where we're like, hey, man, D. Winters might be somebody. Hey, man, Jalen Graham might be somebody. Cam Latsu didn't even play. Braden Willis was barely playing. Those are 4 picks right there. Ronnie Bell's going to be a special teamer most likely. It's all of these guys that you have now that are either question marks or you're not confident in is why this draft is so imperative to find guys that you have much better. You have much better. Here it is. Thig, the kicker, Cam Latu, Darrell Luter, Robert Beal, D. Winters, Braden Willis, Ronnie Bell, Jalen Graham. The biggest contributor there is the kicker. And Tig came on at the end of the year. Cam Latu, redshirt. Darrell Luter, barely played. Robert Beal, barely played. D. Winters, Braden Willis, Ronnie Bell, barely played. Ronnie Bell's the only one who actually really got meaningful snaps like for a while. Jalen Graham, nothing. You got nothing. Now let's look at the 2022 draft. Trey Jackson, project, still. Ty Davis Price, Eagle. Danny Gray, likely to be cut. Spencer Burford, started, lost his job. Samuel Womack, what is he? Nick Sakel, nothing. Kalia Davis, maybe. Tariq Castro Fields, he's a commander. And Brock Purdy. Now let's go one more draft back. Trey Lance, Cowboy. Aaron Banks, starter. Trey Sermon, Eagle. Ambry Thomas, not going to be here for too much longer. Jalen Moore, backup. Demo Lenore, good player. Hufanga, all-pro. Elijah Mitchell, can't stay on the field. Let's go one more. Let's do one more. Kinlaw, Jet. Aiyuk, maybe he'll be here. McKivitz. 49ers fans are not big on him. Charlie Warner, Falcon. Juwan Jennings, restricted free agent signing. So when you go back and you look at all these names and you look at the way that they've drafted, I understand that the draft process is not perfect, but no more developmental guys that need to be able to step in immediately and let them go through their growing pains, but they cannot be guys that are a year away or year or two away. You've kicked the can down the road so far with so many of these guys that now you're in this position where you need to hit.
Yeah, and for the 49ers, like, I get it's tough because they've, like, pretty much 90% of their starters at all times these last couple of years have been set already because of, like, their roster is pretty good, right? So a lot of these guys that come in, I think, like, they don't even really get that opportunity. But there's been a few opportunities for some of those guys, and we just haven't seen it, right? Like we haven't seen it. Like Cam Latu, of course, we didn't get to see him this year. Braden Willis got some opportunity, but certainly not enough to leap over Charlie Warner, Ross Dwelly, right, in any shape or form. And so, yeah, there's a lot of question marks, and I feel like this season, 2024, it's gonna be kind of the same thing because their roster more or less is pretty much set as far as the starters go. Like they probably only need depth pieces, but beyond 2024, we know there's going to be a lot of changes. So a lot of the guys that they're drafting or have drafted in the last 2, maybe even 3 years, like this is when they have to start panning out, and this is when they really have to start showing something, right? So yeah, maybe originally you're drafting someone knowing that they're going to be a backup, but you also have to be sure that, when they get that opportunity, they're going to be able to step up and they're going to be able to be an impact guy and someone who can fill in nicely. I do think that for some guys that we saw last year, the rookies from last season, maybe not, it's not really fair to count those guys out, but certainly when we see the 49ers still looking at, tight end 2s out there in the market,
Not a good sign.
doesn't bode well. Does not
Not a good
bode
sign.
well for Cam Latu, Braden Willis. But now look, do you feel like they have learned from past mistakes, I'll say, because it seems like last season they put all their eggs in the Drake Jackson basket, right? Kind of thinking, we think he's going to pan out, right? Like we think he's going to make a second year leap. That didn't happen. They were retroactively trying to fix the edge position. And so now this year, maybe not so much relying on the idea of, well, this guy is going to pan out. Like, he's going to be ready this year. His second year, he's going to make a leap. That's what we think. And so this year, it kind of feels like maybe they want to insulate themselves a little bit more. So maybe not so much an indictment, but at the same time, it is for sure. What's that word? A hedge on some of these players in case, all the hopes that you had in that players don't really pan out.
Well, in terms of Drake Jackson, bringing in Leonard Floyd and Gross Matos and all these guys to kind of fill in, and obviously
he's done.
Yeah.
Like I think he's done. But I'm just saying,
Yeah,
for like the guys that were drafted this past year,
Mhm.
2023.
Well, and to be fair, the 49ers didn't have a first or second rounder, right? You have 2 top 100 picks. I like the Jair Brown move. I saw the vision. I get it. Obviously you take the kicker, which whatever. I don't want to talk about that. But like again, see, but this is the thing. It's like everybody thinks that like because I'm railing on that pick, it's like, oh well, Jason's just being a dick. It's like you needed football players. You need football players to fill out your roster. You need football players to step in case of injury. And everybody likes to joke around about that pick, but it's not a good pick. It's never going to be a good pick. Not today, not tomorrow, not 3 years down the line. It's not going to be a good pick. But have they learned their lesson? I don't know. I think the way that we're looking at this is we're like, damn, look at all these players, and they're unfortunately not contributing, but they're 3rd and 4th and 5th round guys. And generally, just because the 49ers have been good at it, generally, the further you go into the draft, the less likely you are to be a contributor. The 49ers have just done a really good job in terms of getting guys in the 4th and 5th rounds that have not only just been contributors, but have been Pro Bowlers, all pros. Some would say the best of their position at certain times, and that's good. But now you're back in the 1st and 2nd round. So now you have better shots at blue chip players. And these blue chip players that you are having, you get 32 in the 1st round. They're probably the best 32 that, prospects. It doesn't mean that they're going to go on to have successful careers. Obviously, we know there's instances of 1st round picks busting and, 5th round picks playing well. But now this has kind of put the pressure on the 49ers to hit here. And if it doesn't happen in the first few weeks, which is kind of what Field was talking about when he was saying he needs time, but I don't know what time means. I don't know if that means an entire year. I don't know if it means 4 weeks. I don't know if it means 6 weeks. It's still under the idea that he needs time, but you do need guys that can be contributors, very good contributors in the 1st round, and be cost controlled, because you're going to have to pay all these other people. So I think that's really what is the crux of like what we're discussing right now, is based on these past drafts. Now the 49ers have to, It's not like, oh, it would be nice if you hit. Like now you have to get impact players who are cost controlled because the bill's coming. And when the bill comes, there's nothing you can do. The salary cap is very real, despite what everybody thinks. Very real. And you have a lot of top end talent. That's why the 49ers are consistently in the game or the game before the game every year because they have so much top end talent. But paying all those guys and knowing that the cap is coming and you're going to have to pay other guys, you need cost controlled impact players and you need them in this draft. I don't want to be melodramatic, but you need it in this draft.
No, I don't think it's dramatic at all. I mean, it's the truth, and I hope they see that because, yes, you draft good players, but to you, like some of these players, these good players don't pan out. That's an issue, right? So they need it, and they need it now. Um, and my question to you would be like, do you feel like they put too much weight on character that they're not I mean, I don't know, like the
No, I love
character is
this
a big
question.
thing. I mean,
I
you
love this
said it
question.
like,
Yeah.
and it is important. I get it's important to like upholding the culture that you've
Mhm.
built and all that. Uh, but does that kind of hinder their ability to then look at uber talented players that maybe have
A checkered
less
past.
character,
Yeah.
Um,
All right. I think that's such an interesting question because the hardest thing to scout isn't the player, it's the person. And regardless of whether you believe they're high character guys, you have to figure out whether this player that you're investing in, and a lot of people, not John Lynch and not this regime because they're locked in, a lot of people put their jobs on the line when they invest in these types of players, right? In the first round. Because if they don't hit, you're out of work. And being judging the character isn't necessarily someone who you don't believe is like, gonna drive drunk or anything like that. Is this person gonna be a hard worker? Is this
mhm.
person gonna be someone who can take direction? Is this person who I'm investing in, are they gonna be someone who tries to work so hard that they're trying to get the best of themselves? Because there's plenty of guys that just skate by on their natural God-given ability. So the character thing, I don't ding them too much for that. I really don't. Because you have to find guys that you can look in the eye and say, not only do we believe in you as a player, but we believe that you're going to be here to work and get the most out of yourself and tries. Because again, if a player doesn't pan out or not play well, it's not because they're not working hard. It might just be not in the cards for them. And when you look at character, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're worried that this player is going to go out and commit a crime or something, right? Like
Mhm.
it's not the same thing, but I like the emphasis on character because you have to know that that guy is going to work hard. You have to know that that guy is upstanding. That's the one thing. When I looked Jair Brown in the eye and I spoke to him, I immediately understood what they saw in him. He looked like a 10-year pro already. He answers the question, is standing up straight, looks you right in the eye. Everything fits. So now you have a good player, a player who played very well in college at Penn State, and then you literally like look him in the eye and say that's a guy that we want in the building because he's going to work hard and he's not going to he's very mature and he's someone who is going to continue to work. That's the hard part with all this. Scouting the player is hard enough. Scouting the person is almost an impossible job. Almost an impossible job because like any job interview, Steph, are you going to walk into your job interview and say, hey, after my probationary period of 90 days, I'm going to start calling out every day or every few days. And you know what? I'm going to do just enough work so I can get by. And just letting you know, I'm going to use all my sick time. Like, those aren't the things that you say in an interview. Everything you say is, yes, I'm a hard worker. I work well with others.
Mhm.
None of that
Yep.
stuff is going to show until you get there. So, again, it's very hard to like listen to someone speak and believe them because nobody's going to tell you, hey man, after my third year and I get the bag, I'm going to completely stop working hard. I'm just done with it. I'm going to be done with it. I'm also going to complain every time the ball's not thrown my way. And if we lose, I'm going to start pointing fingers at everybody. No, that's not how these interviews go. Everybody just, unless you're an idiot, as a prospect. But for the most part, everybody's just going to say all the right things.
Yeah, for sure. And it is really tough. I think obviously the 49ers kind of know what to look for, in prospects as far as character and just knowing like who's going to fit into their locker room, their culture, and take to their coaching. I think also is an important aspect of it as well. I guess I just don't want that to outweigh obviously like the talent of someone. I think Jair Brown's a perfect example of the both of those things combining to make a great prospect and a great player. They need more of that, right? So hopefully this is the draft where they can get both, because yeah, they're really building out the foundation of their 2025 and beyond, like their retooling period. The players they draft in this draft is going to be the foundation of that. So they need high impact guys, high quality character guys as well.
Hey, this has been a great discussion. I'm having a blast. But also, when I spoke with Field, no discussion is done without talking about Brandon Ayuk. And I posed a question to him about, hey, Stephon Diggs is 31. He netted a second rounder. Does this change the way you look at the compensation for Brandon Ayuk? And Field Yates said he doesn't believe that they can net themselves a high teen pick for Ayuk. He would say that it's low first round, borderline second round. If that is the case, then I don't think I would like to move Brandon Ayuk. Steph, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to either, and I think it's well within the 49ers capabilities financially to be able to keep Brandon Ayuk, and keep both him and Debo for at least 2024, right? Like that isn't impossible for them. If anything, we know the extension, assuming that gets done this offseason, could lower Brandon Ayuk's cap number this year, right? So I mean, yeah, they need to get that done. I'm all for it. And I hope also they draft a wide receiver who's gonna be the eventual wide receiver too. But you need to start building this offense a little bit. Well, not build offense around Ayuk, but he needs to be more of a focal point, I think,
Feature.
in the offense. Yeah,
Yeah.
going forward.
That's what I think. Yes, it's the money, right? But I think Brandon Ayuk just had one of the most efficient seasons that you've ever seen with little to no targets. Like he's not peppered with targets. And obviously efficiency goes down when you have extra targets. But a little bit of this whole thing is obviously the money, but I do think Brandon Ayuk wants to get 140, 150 targets, right? And why wouldn't he? Because think about the numbers he can put up, at that time. So I do think it's a little bit of this, right? Like it's a little bit of, yes, Brock Purdy was absolutely efficient while being at the bottom of the league in passing attempts. Brandon Ayuk was absolutely efficient while being at the bottom of the league in targets. And he puts up these monster numbers. But there's probably a little bit to the idea that Brandon Ayuk is tired of being not an afterthought. Let me rephrase that. Not an afterthought, but somebody who is on the fringe of being a top 10 wide receiver. Some would say a top 10 wide receiver, but not getting the ball as much. And I think that's very fair. I think that's very fair. Brandon Ayuk does so many good things on the field as well too, including blocking. No block, no rock, right? Like you get that. But there's definitely something to the idea that Brandon Ayuk wants to be like peppered with like Antonio Brown targets, like 100. And who wouldn't? But and I think he's starting to see the fruits of his labor and how well he's moving, that he's even a little bit curious about, what if I was that guy and I got all those targets? What would I look like? And he wants to be talked about like CD and Justin and all those guys. Justin, I love Justin. I think he's my favorite in the league. I think he's the best in the league when he's healthy. But my God, he's getting 160, 170 targets, like like he's falling out of bed type. So I think BA is competitive in the same way. And I think he kind of wants that too. And I think that's absolutely fair.
That's exactly what every team should want from a player. Like you want all of your players to want to be the best and work towards that, right? So I think that's a green flag. That
Green
Brandon
flag.
Ayuk wants more work. He
Yeah.
wants to be the best at his position. And I think like obviously he wants his bag, I don't even think it's all about that. You know, he also wants to be able to be seen as one of those top guys. So I don't think just getting the bag, he'd be happy with that. He wants more. He wants the recognition as well from his peers and, you know, media, everyone. Again, green flag. Good for Aiyuk. I hope, you know, the 49ers do that. Again, we talk about the chemistry that he has with Brock Purdy. They'll just be able to build on that. I hope they get some time to work this off season. I know with the negotiations going on that could complicate that, but I hope they find some time to, you know, build that chemistry even more so that Aiyuk could continue to, you know, grow his stat sheet a little bit more this season.
I think that's a lot of fun too to think about this offseason in terms of, man, um, Brandon Ayuk and Brock Purdy have a full offseason now. Like there's no injury hampering him. So again, like the excitement for this offense, and if there's just even a little uptick, like just a small uptick of throwing the football, you're gonna see some crazy numbers. I mean, I think too, and I think this is the best point. M. Patel says, sign him before Jefferson and Lamb do because they may raise the price. Yes, yes, and yes, absolutely, 100%. I still am gonna stick to my guns today on April 9th and say this gets done either right before training camp or during training camp. I think it's another one of these situations that the money's going to come available on June 2nd after the Eric Armstead thing is finalized, and then you'll see some motion. I don't think there should be any sort of panic here. I still believe that they get this done, and I still believe the 49ers want him to be there.
Hmm. I completely agree on both of those counts. And then, yeah, hopefully it doesn't go till way close to the start of the season because
Like Nick Bosa.
you know how us fans get all freaked out. But
Antsy.
no, we don't panic around here, me and
Yeah.
Jay. So
Nah,
this is gonna
nah.
get done.
Now, great hair and level-headed analysis. That's exactly what you're getting here on the Bully Ball Podcast. This is a great place to end it. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you're subscribed to the Gold Standard Podcast Network wherever you get your podcasts. Follow Steph on Twitter at Steph49K. Follow me on Twitter at Jason Aponte2103. You know, Steph and I have a YouTube channel too that, you know, you might want to just think about subscribing to that as well too. A lot of great content on Steph's show. A lot of little content on my show, but for Steph, for Jay, we're out of here.
Peace.